Welcome back to the It's Too Easy podcast. Ready for what is it, second to last week of college football now? Crazy already, getting
Yeah.
close to the end. College football bracket is coming together. If you were on the Instagram, you know I sent out one of my favorite futures, 150, 160 to 1 odds. So look at that. Follow the Instagram if you haven't already. Jake, which games are we starting with for the slate this week?
Yeah. So getting close to the end here. Two more games until the championship games for the conferences. Very curious to see where a lot of these teams land. If you definitely haven't checked it out, make sure you check out the Instagram page. That 4-team banger I think is going to end up looking real nice towards the end here. Need a couple clutch wins, but it's very doable. First game we got is Florida State and NC State, a game that we're actually on a little bit opposite sides of. Um, I don't really have too much to say other than I think that Florida State's defense is going to be able to stop NC State enough to win this game. So I'm going to stick with Florida State on the money line. Don't necessarily love it because NC State does play really well at home, and Florida State has had some trouble on the road. But I do think they're the better team here, so I'm going to stick with Florida State on the money line.
Yeah, I can't go against my Wolfpack. We're all here for it. It's Carter Finley Stadium is going to be rocking. The Wolfpack are 4-1 at home. Florida State is 0 on the road. So I'm going to take the plus 4.5 at home for NC State.
Yep. And then we got Mizzou and Oklahoma, one of my favorite games of the week. SEC battle. Mizzou's backup quarterback looked really good last week, although they did hand the ball off for over 300 yards of rushing. So if they can rely on that a little bit more again this week against Oklahoma, then they'll give themselves a chance. But I don't expect this Oklahoma front seven to give them that chance. I think Oklahoma minus 6.5 is the play here, especially after just beating a really tough Alabama team. They have the blueprint to get the wins now in the SEC to close out the year and give themselves a bid into the college football playoffs. So I'll stick with Oklahoma minus 6.5.
Yeah, Oklahoma, I think, has one chance at making it into the college football playoffs since they won't be in the SEC championship, and that's going to be running Mizzou and then finding a way to beat LSU at home. I think that's the only way, because otherwise you got to win the division or at least be in that conference championship, which they won't be. So it starts this week. I think that they're going to cover 7 against Mizzou. That, again, backup quarterback was decent, but really they were able to run it for 300 last week, and I don't see them duplicating that against this Oklahoma team that's coming off a big win at Alabama. So we'll see.
Yep. Move on. We got Louisville and SMU. SMU is a little bit of part of that big steamer 4-teamer that you put out on Instagram. So we got to rely on SMU to get a big win here. They are playing a Louisville team that has played a lot of teams really tough. Ended up beating Miami, I think, by 3 earlier on in the season. But I do expect Miller Moss in that offense to struggle a little bit more than Kevin Jennings is going to struggle on the offensive side. So I'm expecting Jennings to have a big win, will them to their championship game, and hopefully get them to win in the championship game. It feels like that ACC is completely wide open, and we're relying on SMU. So SMU minus 2.5. I think that the Mustangs go Mustangs, man. We need them bad.
Yeah, come on, Kevy J. I need you, bud. You won it for me last year. You're one of those big 3 teams that I had getting there was actually Clemson beating them in the championship, but still found a way in the college football bracket. I think that this is their best chance to do it. They're going to have to win back-to-backs, get to the ACC championship, and win that as well. So it starts at home. Big game. Louisville's got a really good defense. SMU does not, but their offense has been pretty solid throughout the year. So I just need them to find a way. I'm taking SMU to get it done at home.
Yep. Right on. Moving on, we got Kansas and Iowa State. This is always a pretty fun game. Iowa State's at home, only 4.5-point favorites. I feel like it's a little bit of a trap, but I'll stick with Iowa State on the money line. I feel like kind of in these weird games, they manage to get the job done in the end. I don't love it at 4.5, so I feel like the safe play is just to take Iowa State on the money line. I think Rocco Beck will likely get a game-winning drive in this game, or be able to ice the game with a final drive. So I'd love to see Rocco Beck get the ball in his hands with 2 minutes or less to play and just be able to ice the game away. So I'll stick with Iowa State on the money line.
Yeah, this seems like a game that ends within a point or two. Weird line, so I like Iowa State getting the win at home. College, it's all about who's got home field. That's a big part of it. And Iowa State's been pretty solid throughout the year, especially defensively. So they should be able to come away with a win.
Yep. Then we got biggest game of the week, SC and Oregon. I believe game day is going to be up there in Eugene for the second time this year. after that Indiana game. Going to be a super fun one. I love this game. I think if SC wins, both these teams will be 2 losses and still both could have a chance at the playoff. With Oregon's schedule, I think it's going to give them a little bit of a tougher time than it would for SC. But yeah, I'm going to stick with SC plus 10.5. I believe the line's at 9.5 right now. And I think they're just giving Autzen a little bit too much love there with this Oregon team. Our schedule doesn't show, Oregon's schedule doesn't show that they've really beaten a lot of good teams this year. But they did beat a better Penn State team earlier this year when they were ranked third before they dropped off. And then obviously lost versus Indiana, beat a Minnesota team that was actually 6-3 and only had lost to good teams, and then beat an Iowa team on the road in the snow. So I do think that Oregon has been a little bit of battle tested there in the Big Ten this year, obviously much more than they would have in the Pac-12. So I think that this is going to be an interesting game. I do think that Oregon will end up winning the game at home. It's a matter of how much, and I think that SC will be able to keep themselves within 10.5 to make sure this game's close and just try and keep their playoff hopes alive. So I'm banking on an Oregon win, but I'm going to stick with SC plus 10.5.
Yeah, I've been surprised how well USC's been able to bounce back. Their defensive side of the ball has been the most impressive we've seen under Lincoln Riley, which I think is the only reason he'll be keeping his job this year. This would be a huge win for him in that program. I think they only have one left. I believe it's UCLA, who's been really bad. So you can almost count that as a win. If they can find a way to get a win at Autzen, then they, I think, are a sure shoe-in for at least one of those top 12 spots for the college football playoff. So it'll be interesting. I don't necessarily think they will get the win. I think it will be a close game in Autzen. Probably pretty high scoring, I would imagine, which I think you're kind of on the opposite side there. But
Yeah.
I think USC they can move the ball. Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane have been solid. I believe they're finally getting their running backs back this week. And so it should be a real fun game. Autzen's tough to play, so Oregon should get the win, but I like covering 10.5 for USC.
Yep. Moving on, we got Kentucky and Vandy. Vandy, I believe, is 9.5 point favorites in this one. But they're at home. They've looked really good at home so far this season. So I'm going to take Vandy down to 6.5 and play it. I think that this Vandy team is just a bit underrated, and obviously they had a decent ranking next to their name, but they still have to play in the SEC, which is an absolute gauntlet. But I think with them being at home, 6.5 should be pretty easy cover against a Kentucky team that's struggled a lot this season.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it even down one more. I'm gonna go to -6 because 30 to 24 is popping in my head, and if at worst I think they push that, I do think Vandy should be able to cover 10. But Kentucky showed up a few times this year. Most of the time they're pretty poor, so I expect Vandy to get a win at least by a touchdown at home.
Yep. Then we got Arkansas and Texas. Texas is back home again as 8.5 point favorites here against Arkansas. Once again, buying it down to 6.5. I actually think that Texas will likely win this game by around 14 to 17 points because they have been a much different team at home. Struggled a lot on the road. I just think that Arch has a lot to figure out in these last 2 weeks before he gets into his sophomore season. So I'm very curious to kind of see how this game goes because Arkansas is no slouch. But I do think that Texas's defense is going to will them to a win, and as long as Arch doesn't turn over the ball a whole bunch, I think that they'll be able to cover the 6.5.
Yep, I'm with you. They played really well at home. They should be able to run the football really well. I think Arch has a lot more confidence playing in front of the home crowd, so I like that covering the 6.5 points as well.
Yep. And then we got one of your favorite games, Duke at UNC this week. I believe Duke is 6.5 point favorites or 7 point favorites. We're just going to take it at 6.5. I like it at 6.5. I think Duke is the far better team here. UNC's just been kind of uncontrollable so far this year in Belichick's first year. He hasn't gotten any of his recruits in that have really made a big difference so far. And they just really have no true quarterback. So I'm very curious to see where this game lands, but I think Duke is going to wind up being the better team, and they don't have to travel far. It's pretty much a home game for them as well. I'd imagine the crowd will probably be 50-50, depending on if they sell tickets to only UNC fans or not. But I like Duke -6.5. I think they're a much better team, well coached, and I think they'll play more together than this UNC team.
Yeah, especially the defensive side of the ball. Duke's defense has been pretty solid for the most part. They've had a couple games where they gave up a lot of points, usually when it was offensive turnovers leading to that. But they've been able to run the ball effectively throughout the year. And we've kind of touched on it. Their quarterback has been solid throughout the year. I believe it's Mensah that came over from Tulane. And so, yeah, UNC doesn't really have any direction. I could see them keeping it close just because it's a rivalry. But I like Duke to win. I think that they should cover 6. I might buy it down to 4 or live bet it. We'll see how it goes. But I do think Duke should even cover 6 at the end of the day.
Yep. And then we got TCU and Houston. Houston just squeaked into the top 25 this last week. I believe they're 8-2. Very interesting game. I'm taking TCU plus 3.5 in this game. I just think that I can't get that Houston versus Oregon State first half. The first half they played out of my mind. Obviously, they ended up coming back and winning the game, but I think they were down like 17-3 at halftime against Oregon State, and Oregon State's only won like 1 or 2 games so far this year. So, yeah, I just can't get that out of my mind. I just think that TCU is going to be a far different competition than Oregon State was, and it's going to take a real complete game from this Houston team to be able to beat a decent TCU team when they're firing on all cylinders. So I'll stick with TCU plus 3.5 in this one.
Yeah, seems like a weird line. We were talking about it's kind of trappy. I'm going to dive right into that trap and take Houston at home to win. I like that it's a pick 'em. It's only a 1 point spread. So being at home, being 7-3, I believe 7-3, cracking the rankings. This is a big one for them, especially if they want to get to the championship game. Then they got to win this one to have a chance to play BYU or whoever else ends up there. Texas Tech, I guess, will be the other option probably. But
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm gonna stick with the Cougs just because Connor Wegman was a solid quarterback with Texas A&M before going to Houston. So I think that's why he's been able to be so successful at this program.
Yep. Right on. Then we got the last few, Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech. Don't have too much to say about this. I think Pittsburgh was way overrated, putting them in the rankings last week, and then we obviously saw them lose. So very curious to kind of see what happens in this game. Georgia Tech's back at home. They're only 2.5 point favorites. So I'm just going to take that line right at 2.5. I think Georgia Tech's going to be the better team. They're at home. They have a lot going for them. And I just think that Pittsburgh's a bit overrated, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And Georgia Tech's just the more complete team. And I love their quarterback and running back. And they've been great this season. So I'll stick with Georgia Tech minus 2.5.
Yep, we love the the Blue Jackets. We love the Georgia Tech. Um, we I don't know. Pittsburgh's just not good. I mean, we were talking
Yeah.
about it last week. It was a 12-point line, I think, against Notre Dame, and we were all over Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame won by like 25 or 30 at Pitt.
Yeah.
So I just don't love what they have to offer. I think Georgia Tech's a really solid team. Defensively, they've been good for the most part. Offensively, QB's dual threat. They've been able to run the ball efficiently throughout the year. Kind of splitting carries now, which I didn't expect to see. I believe it's Malachi Hosley that's been taking a lot of Jamal Hayes' um, ability to run the football, but they've been successful at it either way. So I think Georgia Tech should get it done.
Yeah, I expect that one to be a battle of the trenches for sure, and I think Georgia Tech will win that. Then we got Nebraska and Penn State. Dylan Raiola ended up getting hurt, so I think this is going to be a completely different Nebraska team. Quarterback did throw for like 13 of 15, 205 yards, and 3 scores last week, so did look really good. He is a freshman from Compton, so obviously has some athletic ability there. It is going to be an interesting game. I just think that Penn State's a really, really tough place to play, and I expect Nebraska to struggle there with that kind of crowd there. And Penn State 8.5 point favorites. I'll buy it down to 6.5 and take Penn State at minus 6.5. I just think they're going to end up being the better team. I expect them to run the ball. And as long as they continue to run the ball, they should be able to get themselves a win because that defense, when they're playing well, can do really well. And they are playing at home. So I'll stick with Penn State.
Yeah, between Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, I hope that they have 35 or 40 carries throughout the game. I think that those first 20 carries could be 45 total yards. Nebraska's defense has been solid. But I think if they stick with it, they'll break a few. That's just what they do. They have a really good defense, so they should be able to keep them in it, even if they don't start scoring the ball very much offensively. I think that they will probably end up covering in like a 23-10 game. It should be pretty low scoring. Two solid defenses. I think there's going to be a lot of running the football.
Yeah, for sure. Then we got Tennessee, Florida. Pretty intriguing game. Florida is, I believe, 3 wins or 4 wins But they've had a battle, and yet they still beat Texas at home a couple weeks ago. Um, Tennessee, a little bit of a different team, I think, with Heupel as the head coach and having a little bit more of an identity than Texas on offense. I think Tennessee will be able to outscore Florida in this game. Um, I just don't think that this Florida offense is anything to write home about. So I could see this game being like a 35-7 game or 35-14, something along those lines. So I actually see it going under. The number right now is 57.5, and that's mainly just because Tennessee has been able to put up a lot of points. And this Florida defense isn't going to give up as much, I don't expect. But I think this Florida offense and Lagway could likely turn over the ball more than a couple times in this game. So I love Tennessee -2.5 here on the road in Florida.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say love, but I'm definitely taking it. I think that Tennessee's going to find a way to get a win, which is scary. I mean, Florida's 3-1 at the Swamp. Um, all four of those games have gone under. They had two of them that were decided by 2 points. They beat Texas, was their biggest win by 8 at home. So they've been very good at home. On the road, they've been a completely different story. But put up a fight with Ole Miss last week, only lost by 10, which I believe the line was 12, which we bought to 9 because we didn't love it. And Lane Kiffin hasn't been covering this year. Um, but yeah, I mean, Tennessee should get the win. They need the win. I think they're ranked 20 or so. And they need another big win, especially in the conference. So they got to get it done here. I don't love 4, but I'll take them down to 2.5 right there with you.
Right on. Then we got Illinois, Wisconsin. Not too much to say about this one. Wisconsin's really struggled on the offensive side of the ball this year. Defensively, they've been all right, and I expect this to be a pretty cold game there in Wisconsin, probably in the low 30s to mid 30s. So we'll see how that affects Illinois' offense. But I imagine being in Illinois, they've played in it quite a bit. And I just think that Altmaier is going to end up being the better quarterback no matter what in this game. And I expect them to outscore Wisconsin by at least 7. So I'll take Illinois -6.5.
Yeah, I can't imagine Wisconsin scoring much more than 10. Maybe if they have a punt return touchdown or something along those lines, but Illinois should be able to put up 20 plus. I would expect 24 to 30. So they should be able to cover 7 at Wisconsin, who's been really buttons this year.
Yep. Then last two, we got BYU and Cincinnati. BYU on the road, only 2.5 point favorites here. I expect them to cover that 2.5 without an issue here. Cincinnati has been solid so far this year, but BYU is looking to make a CFP bid and get to their championship game, and I expect them to do so. And in order to do so, they need to win this game. Sitting at 11th right now. I think if they win this game, they definitely sure themselves into the top 10. I expect at least one or two of the top 12 teams to lose this year. Whether it be Oregon or SC from 15 will end up falling out of the race. And there are some other teams that definitely have a little bit tougher games. So I'm curious to see where that lands. But yeah, BYU -2.5. I feel like this is pretty much a must win for them. If they lose this game, their chances are done. But I expect this team to make the college football playoff.
Yeah, I got the Cougs winning the division, so it starts here. If they lose this, they won't be in that conference championship most likely. There's still a chance, but they need to win here. If they do that, they have a home game against a 4-win UCF team at home to end the season before going into that bowl game, which I need them to win. So we're going to take the Cougs. I'm going to take them on the money line. Don't love 2.5 just because it's a road game. Cincinnati's been decent throughout the year. Veteran quarterback, but I do think the Cougs should cover that 3-point line. They need to.
Yeah.
I mean, that conference is not the most difficult, so their only way to make the college football playoff is going to be winning the conference, and they need to do so by winning out, getting to the conference, and winning that as well. So they got to stay at one loss. Got to get the dub here, so I'm going to take them on the money line.
Yep. Final one on the slate, we got ASU at Colorado. ASU with their backup quarterback, 7.5 point favorites in this game, or maybe 8 now, up to 8 now. I think last we saw. But I'm going to take Colorado up to 10.5 and take them in this game. I think Dion's actually fighting for his job a little bit. This Colorado team has been trash this year, and they got a lot of football veterans on that staff. And I just think that in order to kind of get some momentum into next year, they really need a good showing in these final 2 weeks. And the recruiting process is definitely going to slow down if they lose these next 2 weeks. This Arizona State team is depleted. They don't have Levitt at quarterback. I don't know how Tyson's looking with this new quarterback, but I don't expect them to be all that great on offense. And Colorado is going to be a little bit more of a difficult place to play if they're an Arizona State team that enjoys the heat. So I'm expecting Colorado to keep themselves within 10.5. I don't know if they'll necessarily win just because I could see this being a very close game. But I think with it being a close game, Colorado should stay within 10.5. I love Dillingham, love ASU. They have been a little bit inconsistent this year. I still believe they're ranked 25th, so they still are decent. But I think just missing Levitt's going to be a big deal in this game. So I'll stick with Colorado plus 10.5.
Yeah, I like. I mean, it's going to play into Boulder is going to be tough. You mentioned the weather's probably going to be cold. It might be snowing. And I think that then, uh, yeah, I mean, Dion needs a win.
Yeah.
He was already coming out saying, "Hey, you got to give me more time." And you might get more time if you win this week. If you don't, I think that's probably all she wrote. So we'll see how it plays out. They should be able to cover. I think that they might be able to even pull off a win here. Arizona State's been solid, but I can't see them covering 8. I also like buying it up to 10 for Colorado being at home. Sims, the quarterback that stepped in for Arizona State last week, got it done against West Virginia, who's not great. And they only won by 2 at home. I believe they were favored by 12 or something. So they didn't look phenomenal. Tyson and Malik Brown are solid, but Colorado, new quarterback again last week, looked pretty solid. So if that's who they're sticking with, which I imagine they will, should be able to keep it interesting being at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully Colorado will cover that plus 10.5. Yeah, that wraps it up for week 13 of CFB. Curious, these last 2 weeks are going to dictate a lot for the college football playoff. Tulane, I think, is snuck in there right now at number 12, so we'll kind of see where that all ends up landing. But yeah, a lot of these teams need to keep winning. A lot of these teams that are 12 through 18 really need big wins to try and give themselves a bid here into the college football playoff. But who's going to stop Indiana and Ohio State this year? That's going to be the big question. Are the likes of Bama and if they even make it, or Georgia going to be able to step in and beat them? I don't really like the idea that Texas A&M or Texas Tech or even in Oregon are really going to be able to stop Ohio State or Indiana. So I'm very curious to kind of see how that all plays out. I definitely think after last year, seeing Oregon with 3.5 weeks off, going to have to play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Sometimes having the first round bye isn't always paying off. So hopefully it'll make things more interesting with Ohio State and Indiana having a bye. Maybe they'll be a little bit rusty in their games. But I just have a real tough time seeing either one of those teams lose. And looking forward to watching them play off in the Big Ten championship game. Hopefully, cross my heart that nobody dies, but hopefully some guys end up getting injured and end up having to sit out during the playoffs. But yeah, I think that it'll be a super fun race to see the CFP kind of develop here, and we'll see kind of how college football ends. So yeah, until next week, week 14, last week until conference championships games. Hope you guys enjoy the games again. We'll be back again next week. Looking forward to seeing how all these playoff things develop. And yeah, we'll see you next week for week 14. Peace.